Okay, so parallelograms and their diagonals, 9.1.
Nice.
Okay, you have a square, yes.
Yes.
You have rectangles,
Yes.
you have parallelograms,
Yes.
you have a rhombus,
It is.
you have trapezoids. Quadrilaterals, stop. Quadrilaterals are four-sided polygons. Anything that is four-sided is a
Polygon.
quadrilateral. Yes, because you're gonna have to classify, and you're gonna have to classify broad and small. You get what I'm saying now? Because some rules apply to quadrilaterals, some only apply to squares. Some rules apply to polynomials, some rules apply to trapezoids. You get what I'm saying? So like, you're gonna have to be able to think things through and say, all of these are quadrilaterals because they're four-sided polygons. A quadrilateral?
All polygons are quadrilaterals.
No, four-sided
All
polygons.
quadrilaterals are polygons, but not all polygons.
They have to have four sides to
Yeah.
be quadrilateral.
I can't say that.
Quadrilateral? Yeah. when you-
Okay, what's the difference between a parallelogram and a rhombus?
We'll talk about that in a little bit.
They look the exact same.
Not always the same.
Just a little smaller.
Plants.
We'll talk about that in a little bit. They're not always the
I'm
same.
trying to draw them.
I'm just giving you ideas.
Let me try, put some more.
Oh, I hate that.
Put some more, put some more.
I love that sound, it's so.
Okay. Polygons. Okay. You have pentagons, yes, a polygon can be a pentagon. Okay. A polygon can be a hexagon. Polygon can be a heptagon, an octagon, a nonagon.
All the gons.
A quadrilateral is a polygon, yes. Okay. So lots of different shapes are polygons. And the names are based on the number of their sides. Okay.
Heptagon.
Heptagon. I like this chapter a lot because we're gonna be able to break down polygons.
I literally love
Guys, stop talking. We're gonna be able to break down polygons into triangles to start to solve things.
What's it?
Put that last one on that other page of trapezoid.
Dude,
You mean this?
It's,
Yeah.
it's not on the
Focus
itinerary.
on me.
So polygons can be classified in many different ways. If it is a four-sided polygon, it is more specifically a,
Quadrilateral.
there you go. Polygons, okay? Trapezoids, here's the difference. Are you ready?
I'm so ready.
Okay, a trapezoid has exactly one pair of parallel sides. Trapezoid has one pair of parallel sides. Which would that be?
The top and bottom.
The top and bottom. Okay, it's not the diagonal ones, clearly those, if you continued them, would end up crossing. So it has one pair of parallel sides. A parallelogram, the opposite sides are parallel and equal in length. Parallelogram, opposite sides are parallel and equal in length. A rhombus is a parallelogram with four congruent sides. Okay, so on a parallelogram, the opposite sides are parallel and equal in length, meaning I can have two longer sides than, like, two of my sides could be shorter than two of the other sides. But in a rhombus, all four sides are equal and parallel.
Like a square.
Like, yes, but yes, kind of.
But,
A parallelogram with four congruent sides. The sides are just congruent. They're not necessarily parallel to each other. See how a rhombus isn't parallel? It's like a diamond shape. Okay, they're not parallel. They're just congruent to each other, all four sides. Which means a square would not be a parallelogram because a square is parallel and congruent.
Hey, but wouldn't on a rhombus the two opposite be parallel too?
No. Because if I continue these lines forever, okay, eventually with that, because it's like, think about it, if you take a diamond and stretch it out, yes,
Yeah.
it's not gonna be the same as if I take a square and stretch it out. It won't continue to be the equal
Oh,
shape,
okay.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. A rectangle is a parallelogram with four right angles. Rectangle has four right angles. And a square is a rhombus with four right angles and a rectangle with four congruent sides.
parallelogram takes a long time to write. And you write it like 10.
Parallelogram.
I said
No.
P-gram.
A pigram.
Oh my goodness, can you just solve my?
He just made our life so much
I
simpler.
know.
You've already
You
done
want-
it.
Parallelogram, I just feel like the first
Whoa,
half
look.
in a person can sit
That's
down
my
and just go.
Yeah, I make it sit
I
like
can't
this.
believe we just read
I've also been writing it wrong full
You
time.
discovered a new.
That's okay, you can fix it later.
Yours
Give you a
is-
couple more minutes to finish.
Caleb.
We clearly have 10 slides today.
Like by the time
Lots
we're
of
done,
terminology.
I'll be gone.
Lots of classifications.
Wonderful.
Oh, classifications.
Two, 4, 3, 6. No, there's another
You're so
one.
fun, buddy.
Okay,
Two
you about,
people, put some less.
you about ready?
Yeah.
Yes, I am.
I have it on in the book, so I'm
Okay, polygons. Okay, see how they made this diagram that has different colors? See how the polygon, the overarching term is a quadrilateral, see in dark green, everything fits into that we're gonna talk about? So quadrilateral is what?
4 sides.
4 sides, okay? Within that, you have a smaller thing that is a parallelogram, see? Here, okay? Within a parallelogram, a rectangle and a square and a rhombus are classified as those, okay? But then, you notice how a square overlaps rhombus and rectangle.
Yes.
But you'll see how a trapezoid is only a quadrilateral, it's all by itself,
Square can.
The outcast.
okay?
A square can be a
So what
Oh,
it's saying
yeah,
is,
yeah.
we have sections, you know what I mean?
Rectangle.
Quadrilateral, and then trapezoid is by itself in that category. Then you have a parallelogram that encompasses a rectangle, a square, and a rhombus. And a rhombus encompasses a square as well as a rectangle encompasses a square. But a rhombus and a rectangle are separate.
A rectangle can be a square, but a square can be a.
It's no. A square can be a rectangle,
Tangle.
but it's not always a rectangle.
Correct.
I learned that in 6th grade.
Good. Glad you remembered something.
Thanks.
Okay?
I like that picture.
So figures, all 4-sided figures are quadrilaterals. All trapezoids are quadrilaterals. All parallelograms are quadrilaterals.
Is this
All
what answers-
rhombuses are parallelograms.
Is this on the AMSCO video?
It is.
Okay, perfect. I
Yeah.
was watching this.
But yeah, I like how that picture makes it look, 'cause it puts it in the color order. At least in my head, that works better, you know?
Are we gonna have,
Oh, yeah.
You guys
Never
never
listened.
Hunty,
One,
yes.
2,
Yeah, no,
3,
maybe the last one.
4.
Okay,
That's
just think,
kinda-
It's just for
just think back to
Or-
like 3 chapters ago
Oh.
when we had literally a whole bunch of this.
You'll be grateful.
That was like last.
Okay, are we ready?
No.
Okay.
I've been feeling opposite wrong my entire life.
Good job, Chloe.
The more you know.
Well, you
I was feeling.
I also was bad at
all the
spelling.
time.
Margo, you done? Okay. How about you guys stop wasting my marker and coloring on there? Erase everything. Perfect. And if you're done with yours.
Farmers insurance, you know what figures.
Okay, 5.
Rhombus parallelogram.
They're so.
Okay, first one, parallelogram opposite sides theorem, okay? If a quadrilateral is a parallelogram, then its opposite sides are congruent, meaning that side AB and side CD are congruent, and BC and AD are congruent. Opposite sides are congruent lengths, okay? So if if a quadrilateral is a parallelogram, meaning the only thing this does not apply for is what type of quadrilateral? A trapezoid, good. Okay. So if it is a parallelogram, meaning if it's a square, if it's a rectangle, if it's a parallelogram, okay, or a rhombus,
Trapezoid.
opposite sides
Oh, wait,
are
no.
congruent.
That was wrong.
Okay.
That was backwards. Oopsies.
We like these type of rules, they make our life easier.
Yeah.
Because guess what I can do to that? What could I do to that to create triangles?
You
Cut it in half.
Yeah, and then I know, then I can start to prove that 2 triangles are congruent because I have side, side, side. Or I have side, angle, side, and then corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent, I can start to do things, yes?
Yeah.
Ma'am.
Okay,
Quadrilateral and
So,
parallelogram.
5 proofs on the test?
what?
5 proofs on the test already?
Oh, there's gonna be a big proof that we're gonna do at the end here. You guys have to have rules memorized. On your last test, if you didn't have the rules memorized, that's what you missed. It's all about rules, you just have to have them memorized. No way around it, I'm sorry.
Formula.
Yeah, that's why.
Okay, Uno, dos, tres.
Cuatro, cinco,
She
seis.
Okay.
Go.
So let's start here. Prove AB
Oh,
is
no.
congruent to CD and AD is congruent to BC, given that this is a parallelogram. So because it's a parallelogram, I went ahead and drew these triangles on it. Do you see AB and CD over there?
Very helpful.
That means what? What do
That
those?
they are congruent.
No, that they're what? They're
Parallel.
That's what I
parallel.
meant.
It means AB and CD are parallel. It means BC and AD are parallel because it is a parallelogram.
Parallelogram.
How would you want
What's
to
the
start
thing
this
after?
proof?
Well,
Sorry, given AB is congruent, I mean
ABCD is a
parallel,
parallelogram,
AB is.
given.
Hold up, do we even, isn't it just one step?
Yeah.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't it just a theorem that we just,
I don't know. Can you do it that way?
yes.
I don't know. Can you?
Yes, may I?
I don't know.
Okay, so it says prove AB is congruent to CD and AD is congruent to BC.
AB is parallel to C.
Yeah, it's CD.
So you could say that they're parallel because.
What step do you, yes, you have to list that they're parallel first because it's given. So I need to say AB is parallel
To
to
CD.
CD, right?
And
And that
BC is parallel to
BC is parallel to AD, yeah?
Ja.
And that could be a given, right?
Yes.
Or definition of a parallelogram, how about that?
And then you.
I like that better because
Because you're a math teacher.
it's not really a given.
I found this eraser and it's high quality.
That's all, it's got like.
Now, from there, what do we do?
Here,
Looks
so
wet.
parallelogram, opposite sides.
Wet?
Yeah.
Okay, so then I would say AB.
Is
You
congruent
need
to
to stop.
CD, and AD is congruent to BC.
I'm gonna call you.
Why am I not right? Congruent to
Wait,
CD.
isn't that? Oh wait, no.
Similar is just the one.
I'm gonna say Daniel needs to be playing well.
Okay, why? What's the rule?
Because of the parallelogram, opposite sides theorem.
Is that what it, the last one was, yeah, yeah,
Book is very thick. I just.
Is that our book next year?
Okay.
Actually, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
It.
Boy.
Parallelogram angles theorem, the parallelogram angles theorem. If a quadrilateral is a parallelogram, then its opposite angles are congruent. So angle A and angle C are congruent, angle B and angle D are congruent. If it is a parallelogram, the opposite
Excuse me.
angles are congruent.
And supplementary.
We're gonna get to that. Which we kind of already learned that rule in the last lesson. Remember how with the circles, when they were inscribed in a circle, we could take the opposite angles and set them equal to 180 and solve? Okay, if a quadrilateral is a parallelogram, then its adjacent angles are supplementary. What's adjacent mean?
Next.
Okay,
They're like-
so like B and C would add to be 180, C and D would add to be 180, D and A would add to be 180, or A and B, which makes sense because if A and C are congruent and B and D are congruent, then those two on the same line would have to add to be the same thing, okay, to 180.
Why can't you do A and D?
Because I did say A and D.
Oh, okay, yeah,
It's listed
yeah,
first up there,
yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
Yeah.
So all of them.
So anything that is adjacent, you can add to be 180. Coolio?
Julio? Frisco?
Crisco.
No, Frisco.
I think so, Crisco.
Like the cookies one?
Crisco, like the fake butter.
No.
Wait.
Isn't that a cooking thing?
Oh, don't say lard, I
Dang
hate
it.
that word.
What?
Oh, alright.
But Abby?
I drew the picture before I just said those second things, so now I have to erase the picture.
Why?
Because I don't have a phone for like the second thing.
Write it underneath it.
Oh wait, I just have to write and adjacent.
Yes.
Oh, crap.
Smartness.
Sorry.
Okay.
I freaked out for nothing.
Okay.
Oh.
Cool.
I thought I erased.
Definition of parallel.
Can we go back for like 1 second?
Alternate triangles as a-
Thank you,
Got it.
that's it.
I'm drawing myself down.
Why?
Okay.
Oh,
My lines are messy. What's in my handy dandy high quality polyester eraser cleaner? I found this in my junk.
Are we ready?
Show me your hand, Sam.
Yes. This one already has the proof worked out, but let's talk
What is
through it.
that?
Okay, it says prove prove angle A is congruent to angle C and angle B is congruent to angle D, given that ABCD is a parallelogram. So if you say ABCD is a parallelogram, that's your given, right?
Mhm.
Here's what you've got to start to do. You've got to realize that because I have a parallelogram, I can then draw a line through there, a diagonal. Okay? Because if I want to prove that these things are congruent, then I need to be able to prove that the triangles are congruent to do that. Does that make sense? Okay. So we're going to start constructing things. Like you can draw a line AC there like I did, and you can say the reason is because you can do a line construction. Okay? You know that AB is parallel to CD. You know that AD is parallel to CB because of the definition of a parallelogram, yes?
Yes.
Okay. Which then means that AC is congruent to AC because it's reflexive property.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Angle BCA is congruent to angle DAC, and angle BAC is congruent to angle DCA because of alternate interior angles. That's why we draw this.
That's so smart.
So that we can prove that these angles are congruent to each other using alternate interior. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. And then from there, you can say that triangle ABC is congruent to triangle CDA because you have angle, side angle. Okay. So you're gonna have to start to be able to recognize that, which means sometimes we have to add things to our diagrams, okay? Parallelogram diagonals theorem. If the quadrilateral is a parallelogram, then its diagonals bisect one another. Which then creates what inside?
Triangles.
How many?
4.
4, which then I can start to work off of that as well. Because here, all of this angle right here, up here, and this angle right here would be what type of angles? Vertical, and so would these two, so then I can work off of stuff. You get what I'm saying here? So if ABCD is a parallelogram, then AE is congruent to EC, and DE is congruent to EB. And then we have one more slide, and then you got some homework. What, girl?
Is that a perpendicular bisector or just a bisector?
Does it say perpendicular?
How could it be perpendicular?
Can't be perpendicular because you have a parallelogram going on, that you ain't gonna have no right angle up in there.
Okay, if I have a right angle.
Right. Cool?
Yes.
Okay.
Coolio.
Diagonal bisect.
What's the deal? Yeah, only if the diagonals bisect, okay? So you might want to draw diagonals into a diagram so that you can get those triangles and start to prove things too. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean.
Vern, you know what I mean, Vern? That's what
Okay,
my mom likes.
because, yeah,
Just Vern.
It's from a show.
it is from a show.
Cool.
Brand.
The name Vern reminds me of Despicable Me
What?
3.
Okay, next and last
What?
thing. Now, look at this.
There's a B.
If you get this, calculating where diagonals intersect, that means I have to use the midpoint formula.
Oh my lord.
Why? Why would I
Because
use
it's
midpoint?
the middle of the triangle.
It's the middle of those
whole
diagonals
line.
intersecting, right?
Yes.
Correct, so it's gonna cut it in half, yes?
And then we
Okay.
cut that in half. And
So here's the deal, it doesn't matter which set of points you use, like I could use this here, -9, -5, and I can use this here, -2, -1. Or I could have came over here and used -7, -1, right?
And -2, -2.
And negative,
That's not
that's
right,
-4, -5, okay?
Yeah.
And I would get the same information because if you find the midpoint, you'll find where they intersect,
Yes.
okay? So sometimes you have to do that so that you can then construct them because then you know where the middle is to construct it. Get what I'm saying here? Okay, so where do the parallelograms diagonals intersect?
Negative.
Midpoint formula. And I don't care which one you go off of, which line, which diagonal.
So you should be.
It will, yes. Unless you did your math wrong, it will come out the same. Cool?
Yeah.
Okay, those are the things you're looking at in this section, in this chapter, the start of it. Okay, so we're gonna do,
Something.
yes, something new up in here.